And all of a sudden, like, those are like, everybody's like easily like deployed. Like between the teacher and the mom and us.
First on the agenda is some previously discussed items. And that first one is dealing with the workman's comp, which we've discussed a couple times. See if the connection works again. 20. There we go.
This would still be inserted in the policy that we're showing, but I kind of just made the language to date that we've discussed black and just added another section to it. So just as a refresher, what we propose is that when an employee is physically injured as a result of assault while performing the job-related duties and a supporting medical provider documentation is provided that indicates an absence from work, any leave used while under workman's compensation protocol. And I haven't gone to our third party, Thomas McGee, until we have all language. I'll have them get the right wording for that. They'll have all of their leave restored and their leave balanced. So that handles the person that has leave. If a person doesn't have leave, that's what I've added at the end. If no leave is available and employees accrued leave balance, leave will be provided to the employee in order to ensure no loss of wages while under workers' compensation protocol. It's a lot easier than saying making whole or paying, or because it's all about the leave. Now they're both kind of being dealt with the same. You want to replenish your leave so you haven't lost any. I didn't have any. We're just providing it until you can get off of workers' comp. And then I think, and then once again, we do some sort of education piece on the property loss through various avenues, and it's still proposed that we would move this forward at whatever rate to the board. Sorry, I didn't realize I was number one. I was going to look up that policy number again from it's the overarching one that covers all employees. So, yeah. But this was the only paragraph we were adding in that policy.
I don't know. It depends on where we end up ultimately landing with PTO. I think we're close there, but haven't nailed on everything. So I don't know if this would ultimately matter. Mm-hmm. But if the leave was taken out of their PTO, not their accrued leave, and there was a difference between those two things, and it was restored to the accrued leave, are you following where I'm trying to go here? I don't know if we've landed on the difference between accrued leave and PTO, but that could, if there was a difference, that could maybe make somebody feel like they lost something, even though they didn't lose a day, but they lost like certain uses. So I don't know if we just maybe need to circle back once we land on PTO.
To make sure the language matches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me try to understand. So like if the days initially get taken from PTO, the current year's leave.
Yes.
But then when they're replaced,
Accrued.
I got you.
There might not be a difference. But there might, depending on where they land.
Maybe we shouldn't have accrued in front of it. Maybe we should just see that it be restored to the employee's leave period, and then it wouldn't matter if it came from current annual or accrued.
Yeah, that would be pretty easy.
Unless you all saw that would create a problem.
I'm just trying to think of the semantics of the PTO. Does it been accrued or is it? That's what I was thinking. If it's current or accrued, I'm guessing they're going to burn through the current.
Yeah. And we're talking about they're getting this.
I could just say to them, like you said, because then it's just, if it was 2 days, it was in the current PTO, we just put it back there.
Yeah, so we just eliminate accrued in both places.
To an employee. I got the gist. It's
Okay.
enough to send now to Thomas McGee
Yeah.
and say,
I'm glad
make
you
it
understood what I was
word-
trying to say.
word right. Well, if that's acceptable language.
Anything else in that language?
I don't think so.
John?
So I can leave now?
Yeah.
Nice try.
Like John said, he'll get it to Thomas McGee and we'll
See the protocol.
legal it up.
Okay. I think leave PTO is our next item. Pass out the red line of the red lines. With highlights and blue font.
Yeah, you have to get creative.
That's what I got recalled, but previous changes.
Right.
If you're like me, you make 3 changes and you forgot that you had to actually manually change the color.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And because I didn't have your digital redlined, I think I captured everything, but we are gonna wanna.
Yeah. So before we go over kind of the summary of our response and things that we looked back over, I don't think we can stress enough how excited people are about the idea of PTO. That has been something like, I think a couple years ago when we first brought it up, it was just kind of at first like, oh yeah, that would be something, right, to change. But since then, I've had a lot of really good discussion with folks, and I think that it's a really positive thing, and I think it's something that they're excited to see happen. But I don't know if anybody else has had similar things or wants to add to that.
I think they were wary. I think that people in my building at least were wary at first, but as the conversations have been ongoing, I think they're pretty thrilled about that prospect. So in that format. So yeah.
And I think it's also looking at how many pages and how many red lines we've gone through. I think we're getting a lot closer to more commonalities and things. But the summary of where we have landed with our response is that we agree that the PTO should be used before the accrued leave. And that was, I think, on the first page there. And we would like to maintain it being a 2-for-1 during blackout days. The 3-for-1, I think, just that, I don't know how to
it
explain
seems
it.
really, really tentative.
Yes,
So,
and
especially for, people with young children, we're concerned about that. And there've just been a lot of concerns. So.
yeah, and so the idea of thinking that that's 24 hours for one day, 24 hours of leave time for one day is a little
I
difficult.
think we have to clarify that that's for situations where someone is electing to take that day, that they're not, we have a list of
Not an
exceptions.
illness.
Right. So I just want to be
Okay,
clarify that.
So like for your example, having your kids sick.
Sure, yeah, if kids are
Yeah.
sick, that would be a different
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, so that would, they
We
wouldn't.
want to
be-
make sure, yes.
So, yeah, okay. And so we would like to, and we mentioned this last time, but I think this was something that we all agreed on, is looking at the Appendix B language as well for the list of what would be the exceptions for that. And I believe we mentioned illness and bereavement last time, but just kind of making sure that I don't know if this policy is where that needs to be more clearly stated or if it's in that Appendix B. So that's where we are there. We left in the part about supervisors being able to deny the request for the 4 or 5 days leave. It seems the conversation last time was couched around the professionalism of administration, and that seems to be something that administrators should be able to see what's going on in their buildings. So that makes sense. We would like to leave the exchange of 3 days at the end of each year for the 75% of the daily sub rate. That's, yeah, that was what,
Agreed.
yeah. And then to maintain the 120 days, for 2 employee families. I think, with that, that could be part of the discussion that we have afterwards when we make this the permissive item, is to see how often it's being used. Because the number of people that would be eligible for that 120 days, it has to be in 2 employee family that have the amount of time, that would like to take that amount of time. So there's just a lot of layers to it. And if it's not going to be overused, then that's something we can explore. Like if it's not, you know, multiple buildings all at the same time experiencing that. And so it's something that we can come back to when we look at it in the future. But I think,
We put a blurb at the
Was there
very
something-
end,
yeah.
very back page, that could potentially address your interest of bringing the discussion back to the table.
That's right, thank
if
you.
we, to study it, to monitor the usage and the financial impact on the district. So knowing that we meet, at least at the beginning of the year, we meet minimally quarterly, that could be something we won't have buyback information till the end of the year, but we'll definitely have usage by then. So we could review it quarterly at those scheduled meetings. And of course, in a future bargain, it wouldn't count as a notice item. I don't know if that fully meets your interest, but that was what we were trying to do.
and then the page 73, 74, and 77 that we mentioned, that we put at the end here, that was just the reminder. I believe that's part of the appendix.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to remember what pages those were.
So I don't know, like, as we look towards landing on a consensus on this, who wants to tackle the rewriting of those 3 pages? Or is that something that is outside of a proposal and done? I don't know if HR feels
Yeah, why don't you
better,
let me take a stab,
because.
and then if I feel like, oh gosh, this is gonna be such a like in the minutia conversation for us to all spend our time here, then I can maybe reach out to you, Leanne, and see if we wanna get a crew of us together or something. Because yeah, this will have to look really different.
Leaving that chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a thought that I had related to kind of where we are on these proposals is that I don't know if there's another label to put something in, but I feel like we're like 98% together at this point. It's not quite 100% draft consensus, but it is, it might be at a point where the couple of little pieces where we have different numbers in a couple different places, maybe things that wobble as part of like an overall package at the end, rather than something that we necessarily feel like we have to iron out an agreement to right now.
And we could, in maybe when we caucus later, we can talk about that and see whether we want to do that, or if we have, maybe come back with something different. Either way, we feel good to get something put in draft
Yeah.
consensus.
Yeah, I don't want, I'm not saying we need to shut that down, but
But I
just
get
wanting
what
to.
you're saying, too. I get
Yeah.
what you're saying. A couple of, just for larger discussion too.
There could be other things that are like tied to leave, Michelle. I don't know. I meant to
Yeah.
like control F to figure all the places.
Right.
But
Might touch a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah, so, let me get with my team and we'll kind of start brainstorming on these. And then,
if you find any other areas that we need to look at.
yeah, because lots of times when I get into those conversations, and I'm like,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, let me do that. I don't think I'll have this back by next week, though. Okay. Being honest.
You have a job.
We'll meet tomorrow again.
We're gonna move into committee updates. Do we want to caucus over this portion of the meeting? What do we want to do?
I think, because there's not much difference left in this one, we probably already got this right now. We'll do the rest of them, and then time better, well spent, probably.
Did you say caucus right now?
No, no.
I was not following.
No, what?
Sorry.
thought you said that too.
Committee
Yeah.
updates.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not too many
I need
differences here
short
yet.
sentences.
Yeah,
No.
not too many differences left in this, so we don't need caucus right now. We can wait till
Thank you.
the new item.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't very clear.
No, it's okay. I think it's me.
All right, so committee updates, appraisal committee.
We met last week. We are still chugging along on the instructional practices kind of rubric for our general educators. However, all of our subcommittees for those specialized rubrics are identified and getting together, so that's great. Our next kind of session, I'm going to take, we talked about getting some feedback. So I am taking it to our level principal meetings to get administrator feedback. We had a short conversation about how to garner maybe some broader teacher feedback. I don't know that we came to any great decisions on the best way to do that. And that might be something for you and Leanne and your team to kind of talk about.
Okay.
If that might be better managed, I don't know, through ARs or something of that nature.
We were even kicking around, or I had the idea of summer conference might be an opportunity, because people choose those sessions.
Oh,
They would
gotcha.
be choosing a session that they're interested in,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Okay.
So,
So I think we're very close to getting to having that portion of the process kind of ready to go, if you will. And then the next thing we'll start tackling is the student performance piece. So as I've mentioned before, we've used the Keep 2 as kind of our foundation for everything. And it, of course, has a student performance component. So we'll review that Keep student performance. We'll do a little bit of compare and contrast to what that looks like in comparison to how we currently reference and utilize student performance. I think it's very similar. And we as a district can decide, what meets and doesn't meet the student performance criteria. So we'll have some conversations about that. Gosh, it's April already. So I was gonna say, and then from there, but it might be actually then in the fall, we'll start diving into the process, which will take us a little stint as well. But and then I think we probably need to start having some conversations about, I think maybe if Angie or somebody had mentioned maybe doing some smaller pilot groups, so that we're not just rolling out in one large, massive kind of go live, if you will.
Problem solving inevitable issues. that
Yeah.
will occur.
Yeah, so I don't know. I know in my timeline, and this has even kind of been my epiphany since last week, and having some more conversation about it. We had a plan of trying to maybe go live in 25, and now I'm thinking, well, maybe we do a pilot group in the fall of 25. I don't know. So we'll talk about that in the next committee meeting. We've got plenty of time. We can kind of figure that out, but
live in 25 does sound great.
That
But-
might-
Right,
T-shirt.
gonna
it's a
adjust
t-shirt.
that.
Right. So, yeah. That was it.
We have one more meeting, I think. Or am I making that up?
Yeah, we actually have one in April and in May.
May, yeah.
Yeah. So we might in May, I'll just show up and take a nap. I don't know. But no, we do have 2 more. So hopefully we'll be able to maybe get through that student performance piece. That'd be nice. And then we can hit the ground in the fall with the process side of things. So That's the intent.
Would anything have to be approved in order to do a pilot group?
What we had kind of thrown around was that we would, if, you know, if we selected a building, for example, it would still be voluntary for, you know, staff that wanted to maybe try this alternate tool and process versus the current one.
And it would be in lieu of, not in addition
Yes,
to, right?
exactly.
Well, then Green Springs is open to
Oh.
try.
I'll probably have lots of volunteers, I have a sneaking suspicion. But yeah, but there's a lot of things, even to have a test pilot group, like we've got to have the technology and all of that kind of up and running too, so. So yeah, we've got a little more work to do. But thank you for the volunteer.
Well, elementary plan time committee.
Do we wanna, I don't know if we have some more elementary educators that were gonna join us by 4:30.
I don't even know
You
what
all have
time it
probably a better
is.
sense of that.
I
I mean, we're real close, but.
Yeah.
Or we could do the, yeah, we could caucus and.
Well,
You want to get into new item?
Going to new items.
I think, I mean, the professional day one probably
probably
wouldn't
a
take more than 5 minutes. Most
Yeah.
You all have one.
Okay. I think we adopted the agenda.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's me find those. So this is professional day, correct? Is that what's on the
Yes.
agenda? Thank you. So we are proposing, this would be the policy GDCC titled Professional Day. Some clarification on school cancellation, school closure days, I think is what we're calling them, and who reports for work. So at the very bottom backside, we've added a blurb clarifying that certified staff with contracts less than 242 days will not report to work either virtually or in person on school closure days. And I think we outlined when we shared our letters, we were just seeking some clarity based on inclement weather day A and B that we saw this year come out, and I think we're done with those for this year. Some laminate, but because there were impacts on staff that were directed to work, they needed to use leave. And so we just were looking for equity across the system.
I guess one of my, like, right off the cuff questions
Uh-huh.
is, you know, heaven forbid we ever have something like COVID again. This would then mean that we wouldn't be able to require staff to work at all. So our students would not have been able to have had any instruction throughout those March, April, and May, had we had language like this in the agreement.
Would an emergency order impacted that from the governor? The governor issued an emergency order that closed our schools. So I guess that's a
The other thing
legal
I guess
question.
to follow up on that is, you mentioned inclement weather days, this is school closure days. So would it, I guess, either virtually or in person on inclement weather or school closure due to inclement weather? That would fix that.
That would
concern.
fix that.
Does that still get to what your
Right,
interest was?
yes.
Okay.
So if it was adjusted to say on, days schools are closed due to,
I'm gonna interrupt, sorry.
No.
I have like a really bad cough. Is it weird if I like stand back here so I can?
No.
I'm here.
You did what you had to
I'm
do.
here. Live stream and everything.
And being a music teacher.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on that one? All right. Well, time's out about right for the elementary climate time committee.
The Shelby. You want me to start?
You start,
Okay.
go.
I think maybe first and foremost, I do want to say thanks to Leanne and Shelby for their work in trying to get things together, organized, and the agenda together. And of course, the members that met today, all day, at the tech center that are part of the elementary plan time subcommittee. It was a short turnaround that we asked them to. Thanks to you again, Michelle, for securing subs.
Oh, yeah.
To help us meet during the day. I don't know how we would have accomplished what we accomplished today if we were just meeting for an hour after school or something like that. So I just want to publicly say thanks to those individuals. But I thought today was very productive. I was going to reference the agenda that we had here. We just kind of spent some time talking about what the charge of the subcommittee was, what we're hoping to accomplish, kind of go over the timeline of when we were hoping to be able to try to get things to consensus. We talked a little bit about the difference between everybody getting exactly what they want versus consensus, where it's something that we feel like is, what we can live with. Liz and Jill were there the whole time, and they were able to kind of share some insights. In addition to the elementary task force and some of the discussions that took place in that, every once in a while we would have a clarifying question that we needed to kind of run by one of them. And so it was helpful to have them there as well. And then we kind of talked through primarily, is there a realistic way that can benefit everybody to continue with our current language of an A through E schedule, and then also looked at the A through D schedule, and kind of talked through what some of the advantages and disadvantages of both of those would be. So what else, Leanne?
We reviewed the work of that the committee had done previously and kind of went back to those core constructs that, there should not be a financial impact on this decision. We want to make sure that our specialists, if they are picking up student contact time, that it's within their content area, just those, because we did have some new people join us that haven't been part of the committee before. it was so helpful to have Jill and Liz there because otherwise we would have been like emailing them or calling them to try to get the information. So they were able to, I think, speed the discussion up, if you will. And again, thank you for the subs. It was when we reached out Friday afternoon, we reached out to staff and the overwhelming response was, I'll be there, tell me when, tell me where, and yeah, so that was fantastic. We are going to meet again on the 9th. I believe it's a half day that we can meet. We just got to the point of the pros and cons of both thoughts, A through E, A through D at the end of our day. And I think I can speak for myself. I was getting fatigued. I think a lot of our participants were as well. So we'll be ready to get back to those when we get back together on the 9th. Shelby and Todd and I have a planning meeting on Friday so we can get that agenda set. And then we do have a Teams that, I don't know if it's a Teams or something that we created 2 years ago. I'll find it and then we'll get all the members in there so that they have notes and access to schedules. And then one thought that a participant had was that it was very helpful to have communication from the task force, from Jill and Liz come out right away or very quickly. So possible, I'd like to work with Jill on getting communication out on the work of the committee. So she seemed open to that, but I'm happy to follow back up with her.
You mean like in a written format, Leanne, kind of?
Yes,
Okay.
they, Jill and Liz did a great job of after each, there were 3 task force meetings. I think we do have another one scheduled, where they were able to outline what do we know, what are we still working on, kind of so that everyone at the elementary level was aware of that. There was also wider discussion, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is an elementary issue, if you will. But we are going to need at some point to help our middle and high school staff understand it, because if the entire bargaining unit is voting on it, we want them to understand the work that is just happening at the elementary level. So.
I can't speak. Sorry. No, it was a really productive meeting. We fleshed out a lot of different ideas. It was really nice to have representatives from large schools, more medium-sized schools and small schools. Sorry, I don't know what's already been said, but and really kind of hashing out, will this work? Is this feasible? And what is, what's going to be best for teachers and best for students. So it was a very productive meeting. We have another one scheduled for April 9th, to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. So it was good.
I think the next, after April 9th meeting, my hope is that we may be able to actually have some considerations for professional counsel on the April, actually 15th, because, well, the 11th is,
Somebody didn't schedule
Yeah,
kindergarten
kindergarten
enrollment around.
kindergarten enrollment. So, yeah.
And we want Todd to be able to be at his vote for kindergarten enrollment.
So I think April 15th, we're hoping that we'll be able to put something on the agenda that would be some kind of recommendations.
Good work, guys.
Yeah.
Quick work.
That's great,
That's a
yeah.
lot, yeah.
Okay. Go back to the new items then.
Sure.
All right. The next one was, that's a professional thing.
You ready for?
Professional.
Right, so what we're proposing with respect to the salary schedule is essentially to try and meet an interest both of a small group of our educators, and then as far as trying to help simplify processes down the road, to just take the same thing we've done with the bottom of the masters and beyond columns, where you reach a certain point and then we have that 0.006 that kicks in, and you can just keep stepping down forever. To do the same thing with the bachelor's columns. And this doesn't change anything about the rest of the structure of the salary schedule. It would just be to say, instead of hitting a bottom in any particular column, once you reach what is currently on the bottom of the structure as we have it today, you would then start doing that 0.06 walk. And that's, I've got those kind of shaded in blue there where we reach that point where it sort of doesn't go quite as quickly downward. But like I say, I think one of the advantages of this is that if we're able to hang on to a general salary structure for long enough that, you know, people are walking down and all kind of moving together, that will mean there's fewer and fewer people that we have to do that weird math with when they move to the master's column to try and make sure that they're placed appropriately, because they'll just already be in the row that they should be, the step that they should be in.
And the only thing that's new on this, Eric, are those bachelors.
Correct. Yeah, I've shaded in blue just where the 0.06 is, but it's the new piece of the proposal is on those three bachelor's columns. Yeah. And this would, I believe there's no one, it's either no one or maybe one that's currently at a spot where this would cost anything as a proposal this year.
Yeah, I saw your notes. That, I mean, you're not looking to like adjust. It's just.
Correct.
create the
Yeah,
space.
we're not looking to move any existing staff. This is just like creating the space for, that way, when we negotiate a step, then everyone gets at least a small bite of that. And then, of course, I just used this year's base of 46,000. We're not proposing that we don't move that. We hope we move that, but didn't want to get into that.
You're working off known maths.
Yes.
I think you addressed this here, just to clarify, this isn't like the only thing that we may want to negotiate with the salary schedule.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think you clarified that, Eric, just to be sure.
Yeah,
But
this is
for
this
that
is
particular
an
thing.
illustration of what our proposal would look like if it were attached to this year's version of salary schedule.
Yeah.
I just, like, those emails won't start yet.
We,
Yeah.
we all have a shared interest in making that top left number.
Just to clarify. Yes. Good clarification.
Yes.
And we thought we could get this proposal brought forward. As we know, we're working towards looking at the proposed KSDE numbers and all that, so.
Because we wouldn't really be able to vet out the cost until we have those other things as part of the equation, is that right?
Well, this, because of where people are currently on the salary schedule, this would add nothing to the costs for next year.
Yeah, it would take even
Several
longer.
years down
Yeah.
the road, but then people would be walking down.
Because
that
they're not
process.
maxed.
There's no one that's currently matched on the new schedule. We're just anticipating a future need.
Roll on to the next one. Okay.
State. Pull over there, Sam. I'll do that.
Oh,
you did
thank
that?
you.
Yep.
So, one of our interests as a continuing theme for both sides. And this, of course, is educator retention. We also really wanted to be able to focus on our employees who are not on what we affectionately call the good capers. So generally our newer educators who are facing the reality of the capers that they are in will be woefully insufficient for them to, about to graduate, retire. Retire. I got seniors, so I got graduation, sorry. So, yeah, big graduates. So one thing that we learned about a little bit was the Secure Act 2.0 student loan payment match. And essentially that was some bipartisan legislation that passed recently that allows employers to do a match in the 403B. And the employee side of the match can be a match. I'm going to contribute, let's say, $50 to the 403B, and then the employer contributes, let's say, $50. The other option, particularly for our newer educators or anybody who has student loans, is that match can also be accomplished through a student loan payment. You show that you make your student loan payment of $50 or whatever the method is. Then the employer can still make the match. So let's say a newer educator or an older educator who's maybe newer and still paying off their student loans could both attain the contribution on the employer side and either do the student loan payment or do the contribution into the 403B. So that's kind of the impetus of all this. So really what we did is we are suggesting that in our current policy on tax sheltered annuities, we're proposing rather to add language on the back side that you see. And essentially it's saying Olathe Public Schools would match an employee contribution up to $50 a month. Our idea is that this would encourage people sooner in their career, perhaps, to start that process. So we acknowledge that is a smaller amount, but it at least gets them started. And we know that when there's an employer contribution, that we usually have a higher number of people that participate in that. We also kind of want to acknowledge like that retention piece. We wouldn't necessarily want to, sink a whole bunch of money into a 403B and then that employee leave that next year. So we have kind of a vesting schedule that you see outlined there, where essentially the employee from the time of beginning this employer contribution, the match, would need to stay in the district for at least that 4 years to get some of that back. So for a year, if they left, they could get 20% of that contribution. 5th year, and it kind of moves up 20%. The paragraph underneath the schedule is the one that kind of explains that Secure Act 2.0 element of it, and just clarifying that would be the same vesting schedule.
Can I ask a question about the vesting schedule? Sorry.
And this is
My
numbers,
energy
so it
goes
may
down-
go back to
My
Eric.
energy goes down late in the day, so, are we contributing to the account each month? But if you leave, let's say, year 3, you owe the district all the money back, or is it going in a holding account? Or not even happening until year 4? Am I making sense? Because I'm trying to figure out the vehicle of, if they do the secure, it's now paid off the loan. I just want to do the math of how
So
much
we-
could somebody
The district
potentially have to
contribution,
pay us?
the employer contribution, the district contribution would not be going to pay off the loan. It would
Okay.
be
Yes, that would
matching
be,
into a retirement account would be.
Okay.
it
As
would
far
just
as,
be that the employee's student loan payment would count
Gotcha.
as their
Okay, I got you,
contribution. The
yeah.
district would not be paying. student loans.
Okay.
I did not explain that.
Okay, so then it would go into a retirement account and would just be owed back if they don't stay.
I'm not-
I don't know.
I think we'd want to look into how that's done. There's several other districts that have policies, something like this, and we'd want to look probably at how they're
And I
implementing
can
it.
just go into, I just.
Yeah, I know-
figured out.
I don't think they can access it. If I'm kind of thinking of other
That's-
districts.
Right.
That's my,
It's a 403.
that would be my
Yeah,
understanding.
it's not able to be accessed until they depart from the district, then they can if they leave after year 4, they can
Yes.
access 20% of what's in that 403 fee. That's kind of
I
how
think
I
it
break
Just-
it.
just-
Just
Of the district's
the
population.
district contribution.
Yeah. And I know security benefit, OFG Financial does a lot of this.
Because then the other piece we did not have good data on yet is trying to figure out a cost of this, which would be what we would want to know is these other districts that have this policy already kind of in place, what kind of usage patterns do they see? How could we estimate out like how many of our staff would take advantage of this kind of thing?
Well, I see the value for improvement and retention. I'm just curious, do you know if the other districts did it in reaction to Capers 3? Or it had been in place already? Because if the legislation changes and there is no Capers 3, I get why it's still good to say for the
Right.
future. I'm just curious if they did it in reaction.
From conversations with K&E members across the state, I think it has been in reaction to Capers 3. I think from where I am understanding where the legislature is, there's not a high potential for a change this legislative session. There was for a while, moving Capers 3 to Capers 2. I don't think that's gone where we would like it to go.
But we got more session left.
We do.
Maybe if you obviously know a list of districts that have done this, just price wise, would that be helpful to have?
Yeah, it's just-
Who does that?
Yeah.
The mechanics of it.
Yeah, if you want to share that, we can find that, I think.
Yep.
I've been collecting.
Would it be helpful for you to know at least just which districts are using it
Yes.
Yeah.
and their policies?
Yeah.
That way. I could
That
reach out
way you
kind of
would
a,
call,
what
yeah.
would you see in the kind of the ramp up? For sure, we can come up with this.
Just based on the experience.
Paper is one of them. I think y'all know.
What'd you say?
Paper is one of them, but we can get you more complete ones.
All right. More on that, we'll go to the suspension of life as an employee without pay.
So as, so this is in reference to 2 pieces of language or 2 policies, GBI and GBK, discipline and suspension. And just to give a quick history, see, Clint, you told me that line went through there and I fixed it and it still didn't. Sorry.
Didn't know it was right out.
No, that's why I was like, it's finished. During our 2021, 2022 negotiations, we implemented some language within these 2 policies regarding the option within disciplinary continuum to utilize unpaid suspension. So we started using it in 2022. And as you can see, those 2 policies are off to the right there. So it was included in the continuum under GBI, which is discipline. And then it was also referenced and included under the suspension policy there. And at that time, when we developed this language and added it, we also agreed to put a sunset clause in there to revisit in 2024, kind of to be able to kind of look at the frequency of use and effectiveness of adding that language. So implemented in 22, and here's our data. After 2 years, we've utilized this in 2 instances. we've done a 3-day unpaid suspension and we've done a 5-day unpaid suspension, so a total of 8 days. Just to be transparent, had we not had this option, we would have been moving to terminate those individuals, based on the concerns. But having this, it really gave us an opportunity to have that more kind of pointed conversation and really, I think, make the impact and understanding that, things needed to improve. And thankfully, that was the case. Both staff members have continued employment without incident. So knowing all of this, we would like to recommend that we remove that sunset language so that we could continue to utilize this option under these 2 policies. Happy to answer any questions.
The data is really helpful to understand the usage and.
I mean, these are the things we don't want to have to talk about, and we would love to never have to use either one of these policies, but, I also think about, wanting to keep great quality educators who have maybe had a pattern of some things that they've not met expectations on or made a poor decision. And I think this is something that's, obviously used on a very rare occasion and to help make a point, and it's obviously doing that. So that's all we had on that.
Well, Conference, do we say 30, about 30, 35 minutes? Is that too long or too short?
I think 5:30.
5:30 should be good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Angie, of course. is
Oh,
wearing
she said
too
she had to
many
start
hats.
Zoom,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Yep. So yes, and we sent Shelby home.
Yeah.
Or to a mini.
Yes. She was gonna go stop at a minute clinic and.
Oh, no. She's had a marathon day.
Right.
We just want to work our way back through.
Sure.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So workman's comp, we kind of already talked about that. We got rid of the accrual. Let's scratch
Yes.
that out.
clean up.
Leave policy.
Can we go back? I'm so sorry.
Oh,
That's okay.
Can we go back to the first comment for a second? I'm wondering if we could, if we're not gonna put the whole policy in the agreement, add a sentence within, I think it would go within the leave policy language, just for additional information on workers' compensation, refer back to policy GAOE.
Mhm.
So I'm happy to bring that official response back next
Okay.
time.
Within GBZ CDA leaves. A real short one.
That, yes.
Yeah, that short one.
Yeah,
No,
since
I
we're
think-
working on leaves anyway.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll add that to the language. Pretty enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're ready to switch gears to.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Perfect. So, I think we are good on your rebuttals back. We can get behind the 2 days for the blackout days, knowing that we'll be able to kind of review that to see what usage looks like. We already talked about getting the appendix B and that information updated. I think the next one was, am I missing something? Oh, the last one, sorry, I need to flip the page. So here's what we thought on the 2 employee for the birth or adoption of a child leave. You all had come forward and recommended increasing the combined total from 80 days to 120. What we'd like to start with is to increase it to 100. And that way it would give it, again, a chance to see kind of what, if there's an increase in what our costs look like. Another thought we had behind that is knowing, again, we provide a pretty healthy benefit to our 2 employee families in terms of offering family health insurance that the district covers. We felt like meeting in the middle and increasing that to 100 might be a kind of more fair place to look at that increase. And then on the last page, the language about kind of the reopener, if you will. I don't know another short way to say that. What we were thinking is, while we agree that it would be something we probably would want to look at quarterly, we don't know if we're going to have enough data within the first quarter to really do a comparison. So what we edited that statement to say was Olathe NEA and district schools agree that the leave policy will be reviewed with professional counsel and does not count against the number of items each side may notice in their bargaining letters.
And the
Sounds good.
timeline can open.
So took out the quarterly part.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
We don't have it in the quarter.
Great point.
that work. And then again, I'll take a look at 73, 74, and 77. And we'll get to working on that.
That's a jump.
So do we want to, I guess, make
Oh, yeah.
changes and kind of trying to start cleaning it up a little bit and then
That would be great.
so we do that. Get closer to a final version, maybe.
Do you
Maybe
wanna-
take a page out of it?
Leah, do
or
you want to
just by the
send me
time-
this?
Yep.
And then I'll see if I can, accept the changes and then take a look at kind of some of the formatting stuff. And then maybe that's what we'll try and be able to review next week. Would that be all
I
right?
sent it as, did I send it as a Google Doc or did I send it Word? I don't remember how I sent it. It's created as a Google Doc, so I don't know if that format works for you.
You might have already sent it that way then. I'll double
Yeah.
check. If I need to, I'll reach out to you.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be good.
The next one was the clarification on school cancellation days. We just wanted a little bit of clarity there, because you referenced that this year on one of the plan B that some come in. Plan B, yeah, planning is a total shutdown. Okay, so this year on Plan B, that some employees had come, just so we're clear, what group, what employee group is that? We're trying to figure out who that would encapsulate.
I can speak specifically to two employee groups. So we had some coaches that were housed at the IRC. And because of location, they were asked to report, but they have the same contract as a coach that's housed in a school building. Those coaches were not asked to report. And then broadly, and not widely, but there were staff at elementary level that were asked to virtually attend some meetings. I think there were IEP meetings. And I'm not saying that was widespread, but it did happen and staff complied with that, so.
Their building principal asked them to attend an IEP.
And they interpreted it as a directive, so they were.
Well, and I think, we're all getting paid even on an inclement weather day. So I think there is somewhat of an expectation in terms of, we are all required to work to some degree. So that's probably part of my concern with language like this is those situations that are extenuating and, nuanced. And I'm assuming there probably was a larger deadline in place if it was an IEP meeting or something of that nature. So those are some of the concerns I have.
I think optional, like you said, there's sometimes a reschedule and we're getting close to that time frame where they will not be in compliance. So sometimes I think the group does have a consensus, but I see what you're saying with directed. The days, like you said, when you talk about coaches, I do get that a little bit better, like if they're in different locations and some do not, because they do have the same kind of position. Is it something that maybe we can look at the actual plan A, plan B, plan C, and something within that? Sometimes they actually say custodial staff for this and this. They actually say that, so then it's clear, so it's not so much a location, but it's actually the position. I was gonna say, we just need to see what those tiers are. Do you guys remember that plan A, B,
Yeah,
and C?
I have that somewhere.
Okay.
And I
I just
think
think maybe we can look at
that, and I'm basing this off memory, which is very dangerous. I don't remember seeing like a plan A, plan B. Like I know Shawnee Mission has a very scripted plan A, it looks like this, plan B. And so that was new, I think, to staff this year.
I've got a handy up.
maybe that could be a better spot to have some. Look at, I just knew there was some.
Yeah. We might need to look at that one a little bit more just to make sure language rather than hamstring. Another day or on an weather day or something like this.
I just worry about anything that makes it that, Dr. Yeager can't make a decision when we are all fully expected and scheduled to be at work. That even if a school has to be closed for a reason, that he can't require people to actually work for the day they're being paid. That's my overriding concern.
I think if we're reporting virtually, there's always that question of, did I take my device home? Do I have power at my house? I mean, if we're talking inclement weather days, sometimes those range in severity, certainly. That can complicate things, if you will, if they have access to internet, if those kind of circumstances. And I don't know, we talked about those concerns back in the time of COVID when we were getting our staff set up for their virtual school and things like that. So it's been a bit since we've talked about those.
And I think the larger piece that I think we're trying to address, and correct me if I'm wrong, is more the folks who believed that their contract was such that if their kid was at home because of inclement weather, they would also be. And they were sort of surprised and scrambling to find that wasn't the case. Is that?
That was a difficulty. I think daycares were closed, because somehow they were tied to the school calendar. So that's an awareness piece that people may not have had. And so some people they took a sick day because they could not report to work. Might not have been because they were sick, but because they were going to be non-compliant if they weren't reporting to work.
So that is probably the coach's part one.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like that was the larger.
Yeah.
Where the most impact is felt.
Mhm.
I think we would understand the intent here and here. I'm anxious to get some information.
Yeah.
Because the pie's the pie. If this is $1 million, it's $1 million less over here, and I know it's not $1 million, but, or it could be, you'll never know. So once we get some more information, I think we can talk. I'll let you know about it. For sure. I know this one is no cost right away.
We reached out to KNEA and
Okay.
assigned some homework. So they're getting information to
Okay.
you.
Great.
And then that brings us to the suspension, revisit the sunset. I think our interest of the sunset was just to kind of look at how it's applied and how responsive was the use of it. And so I think our interest has been met. So I think we could go ahead and place that in draft consensus.
Okay.
Making progress.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exciting.
I think we're close on leave policy. I think we'd want to go back and talk about the two-family issue just real fast. We can talk that over, so we can wrap that up tonight and then work on the agenda for next week. Could we have 4.5 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back. A lot of movement breaks tonight.
I know. Stay.
So I think we're ready to accept your leave proposal, place that in draft consensus.
That's a big one.
Yeah. You got two things in that consensus.
I know.
And we have some names of some districts that have the 403B match, but
We just have the names. We don't have
at
any
this
of the
point,
background
at this
info.
point.
So Salina,
Okay.
Lansing, Piper, Baser, Linwood, and Turner.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an exhaustive list, but that's
No,
where, what we were looking at as our team was kind of developing this idea. So.
All right. Agenda for next time.
Next time, 11.
Oh, and talk to John about the presentation, so do that.
We can work on
Yep.
that next time. Okay,
Mhm.
that's great.
For Thursday next week, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, move up Thursday.
It's gonna really throw me off.
Show up Wednesday, we will not be here.
Okay.
I think we have another proposal we're working on. Can't guarantee we'll be ready by next Thursday. So I'll let you know.
Well, and if not, we can bring, just that wording changes, some of the,
Clean up
like,
of all the things.
The consecutive.
consecutive, just wording changes.
Oh,
like
right.
for-
Yeah, we had consecutive. you read
Yeah,
that,
or if
consecutive.
employee leaves, it comes back.
Yes.
and those types of ones. We shared those, I think, in our actual notice
Yes.
letter presentation, so we can bring those.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, that was a little bit of attrition through the meeting. there.
Robin.
Derek just started.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, there are people starting to roll in out there.